All right, the WNBA Finals are set to begin on Sunday, October 8th, as the teams with the top two regular season records will face off. The hometown New York Liberty, they'll look to dethrone the defending champion Las Vegas Aces. So it is time to preview the W Finals, and we're going to do it with Liberty beat reporter for Winsidr and co-host of Pull Up with Myles and Owen, Myles Erhlich, and the great WNBA insider and founder of Girls Talk Sports TV, Khristina Williams. Both are here with me now. Guys, how you doing?
Good to be back in studio with you, Dexter.
It is good to be back.
Great to be back. Great to be back.
Now,
finals time.
Look, it's finals time. So I know you guys are excited because we've been saying this all along. We said it out loud. This is the matchup we all wanted. We're getting it now. I'm excited. You guys are excited for this, right?
Yep.
Super excited. This is prime time TV.
Yeah, I'm ready.
And this is the entire season. This is what it's been leading to, right? We were promised this back in January, February, and then we had a whole bunch of games in between. But this is where we wanted to end up. This is where it did end up.
Yeah.
I'm ready for it. Let's go 5. That's what I want.
Yeah, 5 great games would be good, but I think a lot of New York fans, they just want to see the Liberty win, right? So, guys, before we get into it, breaking things down, we're going to look at how both of these teams got here. Now, let's check out the Aces. They finished the regular season with a 34-6 record. 34 wins, that's the most in WNBA history. They are undefeated in the postseason. The Las Vegas Aces, this year, they ranked first in offensive rating, defensive rating, and net rating. Now, the Liberty, they also made history during the W regular season as they finished 32-8. Their 32 wins, that's the most in franchise history. 1 loss for New York in the postseason as they have a 5-1 record. The Liberty, they're second in offensive rating, third in defensive rating, and second in net rating as they are gunning for their first ever WNBA title. All right, guys, I'm going to start. We're going to get right into it to breaking it down because you guys do such a great job of this. And Myles, I'm going to start with you, right? Because when we look at the journey for both teams here, it's very interesting because the Aces kind of cruised through. I just mentioned 5-0, undefeated. The Liberty, more battle-tested. We saw them drop a game to the Connecticut Sun. We saw them tested by the Mystics. Does that matter here, being battle-tested or being cruising easily to the finals? Does that matter in terms when you look at which team is ready and more prepared?
I would say yes and no. That's a great answer to your question. That's a great way for us to start, right? Yes, in that, sure, the Liberty are a newer team coming together. So for them to have experience in these to win an overtime game against the Mystics to close out that series, then to come back in the next round, drop game 1, and then reel off 3 straight to take out Connecticut, they didn't have to get to one of those winner-take-all, which is the whole nother level. But I think that having that experience for a team that hasn't been together is really good. And then the reason why I'd say no is because Vegas has been together and has already done that. They've already kind of gone through that gauntlet, and they know what it takes to win as a squad. So I don't think that they necessarily are missing anything. They're not missing those opportunities to be pushed because they've really survived those already in the past. But New York, I think, needed a little bit of a test, and Vegas knew what they needed to do. And I think that even though, yes, they did win all 5 games, that game 3 against Dallas, they were on the ropes, right?
Yeah.
Last 5 minutes, they finished that game with an 11-0 run after being down 8. So they were tested there. Obviously, we could take a step back and say they haven't dropped a game, but to go on the road, because that was the first time they had to leave Vegas, right? They had their first 2 and they swept, and then they were 2-0 to start the second round. So it was big for them to go on the road and get a win, and I think that was helpful. But with a week off before this, both teams have enough time to lick their wounds if there are any, but also make adjustments as they move forward to face each other.
Right, and we all know that the name of the game in the playoffs and getting through the postseason is about making adjustments. And speaking of making adjustments, Khristina, I'm going to come to you with this because when you look at the Aces, they've been about 6-woman rotation for most of the year since Candace Parker went down. The Liberty kind of been looked at as a deeper team, but we've seen Sandy Brondello rely heavily on her starters in a lot of games, particularly games 2 and games 4 against Connecticut. Does that matter here? Do you think the benches will be a factor in this series?
I mean, you mentioned the starters, but I really think that for the Liberty, some of the bench players like Kayla Thornton in the postseason has been crucial in terms of guarding the perimeter. That's one of the Liberty's blind spots when we look at their defense. And also she's someone who can shoot. And then Maureen Johannes, of course, she's been also efficient in terms of playmaking and scoring for the Liberty off the bench. And Stephanie Dolson, we're talking about the WNBA Finals. She's been there before with the Chicago Skies. She's won. She can bring that veteran experience. And then looking at the Aces, you have players like Alicia Clark, who won 6th Player of the Year. She's played play some impactful minutes for the Aces. And I think that she'll be good for this matchup when we talk about guarding Stewie and being able to shoot the three for the Aces as well. They're known to shoot on the outside of the perimeter, and I think that Erhlich Clark can provide valuable minutes even over Kia Stokes. But if the Aces decide to play small ball, there will definitely be a mismatch. But Erhlich Clark, she's a great defender and definitely will provide impactful minutes for the Aces coming in off the bench.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how benches play a role here with both of these teams. It's going to be very interesting to see how that goes there, guys. And I want to bring this up to you, Myles, too, because we got to look at the primetime players here. We got to look at the MVPs. A'ja Wilson, throughout these playoffs, she's looked like the best player in the world. She's been pretty dominant. Outside of that Game 3 in Dallas, still she wasn't so great. The reigning current MVP for the WNBA, that is Breanna Stewart. She hasn't been so great through these playoffs. For the Liberty, we need to see MVP Stewie? Do we need to see that for the Liberty to have a chance to win in this series?
Well, I think that so much of what makes this matchup so appealing is the fact that it's not just a superstar on either side, right? The Liberty, every one of their starters has made an all-star game in the WNBA. 4 of the 5 starters on Vegas have made all-star games too. So this really is, that's why we get that, that moniker of these being 2 of the greatest teams we've ever seen assembled, is because they are deeper than just the MVP candidates. And I think we saw that kind of play out this season. The Liberty held A'ja Wilson in the 5 games they played against each other to just 16 points a game, which is the lowest any opponent held her to this year, while the Aces held Stewie to 18 points a game, which was the second lowest. Only the Mystics gave her more struggles there. But talking about Breanna Stewart and how she's performed in this postseason, yes, her shooting percentage is not where she wants it to be. She's scoring under 20 points and at 35% shooting. But these last 2 games in Connecticut, I thought were really, really encouraging. She was averaging 26 points on over 50% shooting in those last 2. But what was big in that Game 4 closeout was that she shot 3 of 5 from downtown, because across her first 5 games of the postseason, she shot just 3 of 24. So if she's starting to get those shots, and the way that she gets those shots at the most is in transition. She loves those trail threes. She loves to get those when the defense is kind of scrambling. So if they can kind of push the ball and get her there, that'll open up the looks. And like we saw in practice today, if they can get her downhill early, I think that just builds confidence. If you can get her to spots where she's running towards the rim and just kind of seeing different looks, different coverages, that will then open up some of the mid-range jumpers, some of the long jumpers, just getting that confidence, seeing the ball go through.
That sounds good. Sounds like Sandy Brondello, head coach of Liberty, will look to try to get Stewie going early on, often in the game if she can, because she's going to be key for sure. But you make a great point there, Myles, about the depth of the Liberty. Khristina, we've talked about this when we had you guys here throughout the playoffs, right? When we talk about the Aces, the talent of their guards, right? You got to think about stopping A'ja Wilson, former MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. We know all that, but the guards are talented, from Chelsea Gray, Jackie Young, and Kelsey Plum. We know how talented they are. Here's the $1 million question, and you probably have seen this. There's pressure on you, Khristina. I know you're not paid to figure this out, but paid to do some analysis. How should the Liberty stop the talented guards of the Aces? How do they do that?
That's a great question. So I think that one of the biggest issues that the Liberty has faced throughout this entire season and postseason was trying to figure out a way to utilize its players to defend the perimeter. And so when we talk about that, I think that one way they can do that is try to max their weakest defenders on the perimeter, which is Sabrina Ionescu and Courtney Vandersloot, and try to use their best defenders, Betnijah Laney, Breanna Stewart, Jonquel Jones, to that advantage.
And KT.
And KT.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about the starters, like, in that combination, use your best defenders to mask the weakness of, those guards. Sloot averages 1.7 steals a game. She's great at deflecting. You have Stewie and Jonquel, who's great at protecting the rim, grabbing those rebounds. And then the Liberty, in the last series against Connecticut, they played a zone, which worked to their advantage. They played a zone on 42 possessions, which during the regular season, they only played 88. So maybe they go zone against the Aces, but if they do that, then it's a liability on the perimeter because the Aces can shoot threes. So it may not work out as much as it did against Connecticut, but I think that they can kind of mix it up a little bit to work to their advantage.
Okay, on that note, and talking about the zone, that we saw from the Liberty in that series against Connecticut. Is that something you think we'll see them utilize against the Aces, and is that a good strategy?
I think we will see it in spurts, probably not as much as we did see it against the Connecticut Sun, because something that the Liberty were able to do was kind of take advantage of their size there. And Connecticut was unfortunately missing Bree Jones for the majority of the season, so they didn't have the size that you have with an A'ja Wilson. And the hardest thing to do in zone is to rebound. It's to find that body. So they were able to make that adjustment there. We might see it in some spurts, though, because what the Liberty zone has done throughout the season when they have gone to it is that's just a change of pace to just switch up the rhythm a little bit. And it's really important for the defense to be able to dictate whatever's going out there on the court. So I think that we'll see it a bit, but maybe not to the extent. And I think that something else that's really important to just kind of back up Khristina's point about the guard play and just the aggressiveness of the guards is that Breanna Stewart and Jonquel Jones across this small 6-game sample in the playoffs are averaging a combined 5 blocks per game. Stewie's averaging 2.8, JJ's averaging 2.2. So to know that those two are backside defenders that are helping those guards will allow them to be a little bit more aggressive. And I actually asked Breanna Stewart about that at practice today. And she said, we just need to continue to clean up everything. Any mistakes that happen, make sure that our guys can be really aggressive and understand that we'll be behind them to protect the basket. And I think that that's a really important point because you know Kelsey Plum can get to the basket. You know that Chelsea Gray can find her spots, so you got to be helping off her. Jackie Young, in my eyes, is the best finisher at the rim, especially among guards, but maybe among all players with the way that she gets to her spots, stays balanced and on her feet. So having that backside help is really important in this final series.
Yeah, it's going to be really important to see what the Liberty are able to do defensively, how they're able to attack the Aces on defensive end. You heard talking about defending the perimeter. Also, if they can implement zone, that should be very interesting to see. Okay, here's the fun part. It's all been fun, but here comes a real fun part here, guys. Keys. Do keys to the game, okay? Keys to the games. We're hoping for 5 games here, folks. What are your keys, Khristina and Myles, for the Aces winning the series and the keys to the Liberty winning the series? Khristina, I'm going to start with you first. What are your keys that you have to both teams winning the series?
I think that the keys, let's start with the Aces. For the Aces to win this game is going to be the battle of the boards. Myles talked about the presence of Jonquel Jones and Breanna Stewart, which are two of the best rebounders and, again, rim protectors in the game. So the Aces are going to have battle that out with them. And then also another key for the Aces would be their perimeter defense. The New York Liberty finished the regular season as the greatest three-point shooting team in WNBA history, is one of the greatest. They set the record for most threes in a season with 444. So guarding that perimeter, making sure that Sabrina Ionescu doesn't get too hot. But Nyjah Laney has also been impactful from beyond the arc as well in this postseason. And I think that for the Liberty, what they're going to have to do is, one, play through Jonquel Jones. I don't know if the Liberty know they have Jonquel Jones, but she has been on fire in this postseason and super impactful for the New York Liberty on both sides of the ball, and really ever since the second half of the All-Star break as well. And then they're going to have to find a way to slow down A'ja Wilson. She's dominant in the paint, and it's just going to go back to those defensive schemes to just stop her from doing that. Or maybe you let A'ja run up the score and you guard players like a Jackie Young, Kelsey Plum, Chelsea Gray to limit their scoring. But those are some of my keys to
all good keys. If it makes you think about it for the Liberty, how tough it is to guard the Aces, right? You got to almost pick your poison there with them when you look at what you're going to do. What about you, Myles? What are your keys for both teams winning the series?
Well, first, I just want to add to everything Khristina's saying. When you talk about the perimeter defense for the Aces, in the 4 regular season games against them, Sabrina Ionescu averaged 21.3 points on 53% shooting from the floor, but also 53% shooting from beyond the arc, hitting 4.5 threes per game over that stretch. And so that's huge. And Sab is somebody, she loves the moment. The bigger the moment, the more she wants to come through. So if you're giving her any daylight at all, that's going to be really dangerous. And then conversely, Kelsey Plum is a player that loves that, but nobody loves that more on that side, I would say, than Chelsea Gray. Yep. Playoff Chelsea last year was just a thing. She shot over 60% on almost 22 points a game last year. And this year, I think she's still playing like an all-star in the playoffs, but it feels unstoppable to try to stop that free throw line fadeaway jumper that she takes. It feels like 5 minutes and in at the end of the game. Chelsea Gray finding ways to not make it a one-possession game late down the stretch is huge for the Liberty because Chelsea Gray just does not miss those shots. And I think back to what you were saying earlier about trying to find a balance between those Kia Stokes and Alicia Clark minutes, because the Liberty can, and when they were at their best, they can exploit both of those lineups, because the way that they exploit the Kia matchup is they just don't defend her and they just let her stand out on the perimeter. And if she shoots, that's a win for the defense. But the problem is then you've got somebody big matching up with Jonquel Jones. So it's a heavy 5-on-5 on the defensive side, even if it's closer to a 4-on-5 on the offensive side. But then you bring in Alicia Clark, 6th player of the year, just such a strong perimeter defender. And she's a knockdown shooter. Yep. And she's also someone who's so good at punishing mismatches. So you can't just keep the lineups as they are. So that might be when we see a little bit more of KT. And then and not even take KT, not even to take like Jonquel Jones out, but I would love to see KT take out either Sabrina or Courtney, so that you kind of still impose your will with that physicality, and you still have then the flexibility to defend the perimeter as well. But on the season, Kia Stokes against in the 4 games against the Liberty in the regular season was a minus 9.3 plus minus across those games, and Alicia Clark was a plus 0.5. So she was about even, but they really lost the Kia minutes by a lot. And there was that game, I think back to that 38-point game, right, earlier in the season, where Becky Hammond was just scrambling to try to find something that would work. And that's what the Liberty were just kind of exploiting, and Jonquel was eating. And she wins the Commissioner's Cup MVP when she has 16 and 15. And then in the playoffs, she's leading all rebounders with 12.8 per game. So for JJ to be the first player in WNBA history to have 6 straight double-doubles to start the postseason just shows what kind of a role she's on right now. And like you said, she's a huge X factor. And Benijah is another person you called out.
Yep.
In their one loss, she had her one poor game where she had 3 points. In the other 6 games, she had 19, 19, 20, 20, and 21. I think those were her numbers. And as B goes, the Liberty go. And that's someone who's picking up best defender 94 feet on defense, and also just so smart in the way that she's approaching her offensive game. And we've seen we've seen Benijah since she came to this team a couple of years ago. And her role in 2021, I would not have believed that player could also adjust into the player that she is here, because they asked so much of her and used her maybe a little too much almost, which last year they didn't have her. She was on the shelf a lot of the time. But she was a player that was their shot creator and their shot maker. So for her to be willing and so bought in to kind of take a step back and say, I'm going to shoot the efficient shots. Those corner threes she's knocking down.
Doesn't miss.
She's cutting.
Right.
That when she gets to her left hand, she's not missing. And then she can still dribble and get into her spot. So her efficiency, there's nowhere that you can look away on this Liberty team.
No,
and that also speaks to the team's versatility, right? And what they've been preaching this entire season was the cohesiveness and just being able to build that chemistry for the big stage, which is the WNBA Finals. So.
Yeah, they've been preaching that. You've been preaching the patience with them all year long, and here the Liberty are in the WNBA Finals. So, you know what? We've gone through the keys. We've looked at different things in the matchups, what they need to do. So y'all know what time it is. It's time for predictions. It's time for predictions. Khristina loves the predictions here. Prediction time here. I think through most of these previews you've done, you guys have been on the money with the predictions. So the people, you should trust Myles and Khristina here. They're pretty on money with this. Myles, here you go. I'm going with you first. I'm going to let Khristina go last. What's your prediction for this series? Who wins this? Is it the Liberty winning their first championship, or is it the Aces going back-to-back?
So the Aces having home court is going to be huge, I think, in this series, because neither of these teams were teams that lost at home very often. And when we look at how they played each other in the regular season, that also played out. In the 4 games in the regular season, the Liberty won their 2 in Brooklyn, the Aces won their 2 in Vegas. The exception was that Commissioner's Cup game where the Liberty were able to steal it there. So what I want to say is, first, to the fans here in New York City, it's to show up. It's to show up to this game, to make the Barclays Center, to sell it out completely, make that home court advantage what it needs to be, because you know Vegas is going to be loud. You know that these fans have been there, that they feel like they are going to be the first team in 2 decades to run it back and win back-to-back championships. So the Liberty need to bring that energy. And if they do, You can't bring us onto this show in New York and say, you're trying to get us in trouble.
Nah, I don't want any problems for you. Don't want any problems for you. I'm not trying to get Khristina and Myles in trouble. So do the right thing. That's all I'm going to say. Just do the right thing.
I am going to do the right thing. I'm not going to do the right thing. The Liberty are going to do the right thing.
There you go.
The Liberty are going to take this. My question is, can they steal a game in Vegas and then try to defend it on their home floor? What's more likely to me is that this is going to go 5. And you know what? Based on everything we've seen throughout this whole season, we deserve it to go 5.
Yep.
But I'm going to have the Liberty taking it in 5.
Liberty in 5. You heard it from Myles. He did the right thing. I think the viewers will agree with that. Khristina, pressure's on you. Are you going to also do the right thing here?
The Liberty, as Myles said, will do the right thing, and I'm going to have them taking this series and it go into a Game 5 as well. I think that one thing that Jonquel Jones said to us in practice today was that she feels like the Liberty are a great team to pair up and match up against the Aces, and so I think that we're going to see an extremely close series between these two teams because of the versatility of the players and the depth of the rosters as well. And the Aces, you mentioned, they've only lost 2 games at home. Jonquel Jones said that, they need to steal one on the road because it's like the Liberty will play against the Aces plus their fans. Yeah. That's like the sixth player coming off the bench is the fans and trying to get that. And also, the Liberty. Last time they've been there was in 2001. They lost against the Sparks, and so they want to bring this first championship to the city. I think that the Liberty, when we talk about going against the Aces, they have a better ball movement. And then the Aces, they're a better defensive team. So it's just going to come down to those adjustments. That could be game by game or quarter by quarter. But we have the Battle of the Titans.
Battle of the Titans, which is what a lot of W fans wanted. You got the Liberty and Aces that'll start on Sunday, October 8th. I know these guys are excited. And if you look at their predictions, they're excited for this series. If you look at the predictions, what they are telling you people is that there's going to be a parade. I don't know if it's going to be down the Canyon of Heroes. I don't know if it's going to be Flatbush Avenue. There you go. You got a parade. So I'm going to see you guys at the parade. That's what you guys are saying.
I'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Myles doesn't sound too sure about it, but I'll be there.
Say it with your chest, Myles.
So I am trying not to. I'm trying not to put us onto every screen in Vegas between now and Sunday.
You know what? We've learned this before. If we say certain things, certain teams, and their social media teams, which we appreciate you guys, we'll use it for motivation. We're not trying to end up on somebody's Twitter mentions. We're not trying to do that. That is.
I will say that. Something that I admire about this Liberty team is that they are very good at keeping everything in front of them. They're like, whatever we've achieved is great, but we got something bigger to focus on. So I'm not ready to talk about parades until they're ready to talk about parades.
Fair enough. That's fair enough.
I like that.
Maybe a little bit too early for the parade talk, but it was never too early for a good WNBA Finals preview, as we have done here with Myles and Khristina. That is Myles Erhlich, the great Liberty beat reporter for Winsidr, also co-host of Pull Up with Myles and Owen. Go check that out. And Khristina Williams, fantastic WNBA insider, founder of Girls Talk Sports TV. She does a lot of great things. Guys, I'm so glad we got to preview each round of the WNBA playoffs finals. I know I'll be getting more from you guys in terms of coverage through the finals, so we'll talk more, and I'll see you guys soon.
Absolutely.
To the viewers, hope you enjoyed this WNBA Finals preview. Thank you.